I guess my tips for writing action films are like write within a sort of confines of a budget you think is possible. Like don't write some ginormous sequence that would only ever be made in. I mean, I guess the question is like, are you talking about specs or rewrites? I think if you're writing a spec script which you're just trying to get noticed for, maybe write whatever the fuck you want. Like if you think the best sequence you can write that will have some manager or if you're entering a competition will make them go, whoa, I've never seen anything like this before. Yeah, write some 0G 20 jumbo jets being sucked into black holes as an earthquake tears the world apart. Like, it'll cost $100 million. And if your film gets made, it might be rewritten into like a Cessna ditches into a pool or something. But go nuts. I think if you're writing for a film that you know is getting made, like you've been hired to do rewrites, it's probably a good idea to write within what you think is a kind of a budget that you think the movie would be made. I mean, I can give you an example from Skin Trade. The draft I sent back for Dolph, the first draft, I was like, oh, and then at the end, Dolph's character and the character played by Ron Perlman, they'll be in this plane and the plane takes off and in midair the plane explodes and they fight on this burning plane as it hurtles towards the ground and they're fighting and then they shoot the pilot and he dies and Ron Perlman and him are fighting over a parachute and Ron Perlman, resigns himself to his fate and Dolph jumps out of the plane as it explodes. It's just like, yeah, man, that's never going to happen. And at the budget they have, if they do try and do it, it's not going to look as good as you picture it in your head. Like we were pretty fortunate enough with Skin Trade where I think they had a $9 million budget, which is really great for that sort of a movie. So we were able to do some pretty cool sequences. We had a chopper crash and we had motorbike chases and things like that. But yeah, I think it really depends on the context of what you're writing. The other thing I'd say is don't overwrite action sequences. Like there's nothing more boring than reading one character, like a beat by beat description of every punch or kick. Like your eyes will just glaze over. Like even if you know it's going to be a big 5-minute sequence, keep it relatively concise and maybe just describe it thematically somehow, like or infuse it with some amount of character. Like save those script pages for more interesting stuff. Don't waste them on blow by blow descriptions. Because that stuff will eventually get expanded upon by stunt coordinators and second unit directors and things like that anyway, and it'll all change. No one really gives a fuck about how the writer envisions the step-by-steps of a fight because frankly someone will probably have a better idea than you anyway for that stuff. Like Dolph Doubles, all those guys, they know what they want to do in fights, how to best do it. The DOP will have opinions just based on where they can put a camera. So don't go nuts with it, it's boring to read. I suppose my writing process depends on what it is that I'm writing. So if we talk about specs, I've written a bunch of specs with a writing partner, which I find really useful. I've written a bunch of films with this guy named Ben Phelps. And what we would typically do is, just spitball a shit ton of ideas until we kind of come onto something that we like as an idea and then interrogate just like that as like just a log line or whatever down the pub, just like where could this go, what would it be? Then I suppose the process is just like outlining, and when it comes to like writing films with him, he likes like palm cards and stuff, so we'll do that. I'm not that fussed about that, but yeah, like heavily outlined stuff. I think it's a terrible mistake to be like, I have an idea for a film, fire up Final Draft or whatever, fade in, it's like you'll just fucking bone yourself doing that. So yeah, I think the more you can outline, the better. Whether you want to just do like dot points or end up writing like a 40-page scriptment, fuck it, that's really up to however that works for you. But I think if you can look at a short document and go, yeah, there's my film beats right there, you're going to save yourself a hell of a lot of time down the road. I mean, look, those beats might all all change. But at least for getting that first draft out and feeling good about it and getting it out in a time frame that's like, you know, realistic, you'll feel good that you're not having to unpack some fucking spaghetti of plotting, you know, as you go. Look, if you're writing a novel, I think that's like the romantic ideal of that is just like fucking start and see where it goes, you know. But I think screenplays are so much about structure. And I don't mean like 3-act structure, you know, I mean just structure in general. I think you can have a 5-act film or a 2-act film, or, you know, you don't have to make it save the cat. You know, I think those things are the idea of like plug and play screenplays where you go, oh look, the appendices of this book has like a form I can fill out that will write my movie for me. It's fucking for the fairies, you know. But that being said, you know, what that book I suppose is about is like structure, and, you know, so I guess that outlining process is, you know, about structure, and then really trying to figure out ways to make your characters interesting. You know, you don't want these characters to be just, you know, fucking names and haircuts, you know, like how are they going to do interesting things? How are they going to have interesting conflict? You know, like how are your good guys going to conflict with each other before they're even like going up against your bad guys or whatever, you know? I mean, those are black and white terms, but, you know, yeah, so I think for specs, you know, definitely feels like you want to go through a process before you even start writing the script. In many ways, like writing the dialogue should be the easy part. That being said, you know, by the time you get to your second draft, you might pull it all apart, and you should, because your first draft's probably garbage. I guess for rewrite stuff, you know, I got hired to do some uncredited rewrites on some stuff where they were just like, hey, look, here's some money. We don't want you to change much, but just do dialogue pass, like just rewrite the dialogue for just this character. And in that case, you're just like, yeah, all right. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I just pulled apart all of the scenes where that character was, had a discussion with the actor who was playing that character about, you know, what he wanted his character to be. Because he said, I'm only doing this movie if we do a rewrite of my character. I have some ideas, you know, and it's like, okay. And he told me what his ideas were. It's like, okay, let's just do that. And they're like, don't touch the dialogue of people in other scenes, just do it in this guy's scenes. Like, all right. You know, and invariably you rewrite some of the dialogue of characters who he's in scenes with, but, you know, you're just focusing on that. And that's a weird process, I suppose. But because you're not the conceptualizer of that film, yeah, you're not having to worry so much about, you know, all of those story beats and stuff. You're just like, let's just write some cool dialogue, man. You know, some sweet jokes and, yeah, stuff like that. And, you know, that's some weird shit. Like, I was hired to do just a dialogue pass of a movie, and they were like, we want the character to be like Indiana Jones. And it's like, what the fuck is that? Like, Indiana Jones is more than his dialogue, you know? Like don't get me wrong, Indiana Jones is fucking great dialogue, but he's kind of also what he does, you know? Like, oh, you just sort of feel like writing in the character description, this character just has a hat and a whip, and there you go. You know, so, but, you know, then you go, oh, well, let's unpack that. He's like, you know, he's roguish and he's got wit and things like that, and you try and do that, but, you know, they're all interesting processes depending on what it is that you're doing. I mean, the form of screenplays, I guess, has kind of always interested me, because I've never seen a script as anything, I suppose, more than a blueprint for what that film will be. I mean, you want your big type to read well and to pop off the page and make whoever's reading it, whether it's your manager or a producer or whatever the actor is that it's going to, you know, like, to be like, yeah, this reads great, but ultimately, you know, it's just a fucking script. Like, will get broken down into like all the, you know, into a one-line synopsis for a scene that an AD writes, and it doesn't have to be fucking Shakespeare, you know, like, it's not Dostoevsky, you know. You don't have to write that thing like it's you're trying to win a Pulitzer for fiction novel, you know, like, write it well, but, you know, don't overwrite it. Like, that's one thing that bugs me when I read scripts, and it's like you get like these like 9-line long descriptions of character or something. It's like no one gives a fuck. You know, like short and sharp. Like make people want to turn the page, not put it down like because it's, you know, some sort of paperweight. Write 10 scripts, and the first 9 of them will be shit. And then that 10th one, you might be starting to get pretty goddamn good at like form and things like that. You know, don't think that first script or even that first idea is a good one. You know, like something that Ben, who I've written a bunch of films, and I used to do is every day we'd try and send each other just a new log line for a film and just be like, what do you think of this log line? What do you think of this log line? And what it did was make us feel so not precious about movie ideas. You know, like, because I think a mistake people make, whether it's at the conceptualization stage of their movie or writing scenes, is that the first idea that pops into their head, they go, that's great, that's what I'll do. And it's like, no, that first idea was probably fucking shit. Don't do that idea. Why don't you like challenge yourself to come up with like 10 ideas and see if you can come up with a better one, you know? Especially at that early stage, because if you're gonna spend, you know, a couple of months outlining it, a month writing that first draft, you better make sure that that's a fucking good idea, because I can guarantee you there's a million other fucking schmucks out there with ideas, thinking their ideas are great too, and their ideas are probably better than your ideas, or at least a few of them are, so make sure your idea is fucking good, you know? Don't settle for your first idea. Don't think your first script is good, it's not. And look, I'm not the arbiter on what's a good script, don't fucking take my word for it. Much better writers than me have said that. Much better writers. I kind of think you know you've got a good idea when you've really interrogated that idea enough that you feel like, yeah, you want to write this. And I think it's just like, is this my best idea? Is how I want to tell this idea the best way to tell that idea? So it's like, whatever your basic story is, like, who are those characters then going to be? Is that the best way to tell that story? You know, what is the form of it going to be? You know, is a found footage story the best way to tell this movie? Probably not, because most found footage is fucking shit. But, you know, but maybe in the case of Cloverfield or something, that was definitely the best way to do that, because that felt a bit fresh. So, you know, I think just interrogate the fuck out of your ideas. And then for me personally, you know, I've certainly written a whole bunch of scripts that I look back on now and go, well, I don't know why I bothered to fucking write that idea, because I've got much better ideas now. I probably had better ideas then. I mean, I don't regret writing those scripts, because I think writing all of the scripts that sit in my drawer, which no one will ever read, were a waste of time, because again, they help me practice. You just got to back your idea. You know, there's all those stories about people who wrote a script that they're passionate about, no one wanted to do it, and then all of a sudden, like, someone reads it somewhere and says, fuck, this is great, let's make this happen. So really, I think it's just up to you. But in my point of view, just don't settle on your first idea.